we are finally playing 2007's Halo 3 on PC, and it is in general looking great and feeling great to play. Along with Halo 3, this update to the Master Chief Collection has some other changes as well that generally improve the entire package on PC, including an audio update. But before we get to those details, I think commendations are in order. My memories of Halo 3 are those of it running on the Xbox 360, so sub 720p with no anti-aliasing and 30 FPS, even with an occasional frame pacing problem back then. So seeing it for the first time at 4K and 60 FPS on my panel in front of me was an excellent feeling, and I came away from that experience with a greater appreciation for Halo 3's technical production. My mind remembers Halo 3 for its visual faults, like its character modeling and some of its choices for animation, sound, and lighting technology. But seeing the game at a higher resolution and frame rate made me appreciate other details. Halo 3 has rather high resolution textures, for example, on a lot of objects. While the Xbox 360 did not have a lot of system RAM for incredibly high resolution textures, Bungie opted to use a lot of decals and tiling detail textures on the game assets. So when you get up close to many of the textures in Halo 3, you can see that the detail is very dense with tiny scratches and little details on the metal, or little nooks and crevices in ground textures. It's just generally great texture detail overall in this game due to the tiling detail textures. I was even surprised to find out on closer inspection that Halo 3 very rarely uses a form of offset bump mapping or a rudimentary form of parallax mapping on some rare textures. You can see it here in the internal foam on this weapon case here. So the foam itself is not real 3D geometry, but the illusion of it from the texture distorting itself based upon your screen movement. You can even see the UV seam inside the surface of that texture. Another place where I found these parallax textures was on the tires and rims of the Warthog, where the divots on the tire tread are utilizing this tech to make it look 3D from a majority of the viewing angles. And on the wheel rims, you can see how it makes the screws and the little divots inside the wheel look suitably 3D. It's pretty cool stuff. But those are all features that were there in 2007, just hidden behind low anisotropic filtering and low resolution. There are upgrades above that version of the game that come standard with the Master Chief Collection on PC, like the FOV slider, which at more comfortable higher FOVs really shows off how darn fast Halo 3 is when not locked to a default narrow FOV. In the PC version, we also get the advantage of the enhanced graphics option above the Xbox One versions of the game, much like every single Halo MCC release before this. Since this game is not using a remade graphics presentation or a remastered graphical presentation like the anniversary editions of Halo 2 or Halo CE, this enhanced setting only really affects one aspect of the presentation, and that is the draw distance of static and dynamic world objects. Using the enhanced setting, dynamic models like the corpses or smaller things on the ground render out further into the distance away from the camera. This applies to things like graph and particle effects as well, but the standard original distance for grass is not exactly bad. Below the original graphical option, you have the performance mode as well, which further reduces the draw distance levels very close to the camera if you have a particularly old PC, and will also get rid of some of the projected shadows the game uses. If you are GPU limited, I saw going down from enhanced to original graphics, increasing performance by around 4%. And going down to the performance mode from enhanced mode with all of its cuts to draw distance and such, saw performance increasing by 17% over the enhanced setting. This option generally affects CPU performance more in this game, where I tested it at 720p, leaving the GPU underutilized. Here, going from enhanced to original graphics increased performance by 24% when the CPU was limiting frame rate. And going from enhanced performance mode increased performance on the CPU by 55%. So this is a heavy setting for the CPU, but considering we're already at above 400 FPS here on a 3900X at the highest settings, and it's not really using a lot of threads, any option below enhanced is really only going to be a problem for older CPUs. Very old CPUs probably. GPU-wise, this game runs on almost anything and it's generally a non-issue, but more on that at the end of this video. But as an aside, I did try and get this game to run on a GPU that came out in 2007 around the time Halo 3 did on Xbox 360, and that is on the venerable 8800 GT. But sadly, this game just freezes when trying to utilize this GPU when you get in-game using the latest driver for Windows 10. Even when trying multiple known hacks and wrappers to get the GPU to run in DX11 mode, the game just did not allow it with this error message. I think this GPU's feature set is enough for this game, but its drivers are just too old. This is a shame, as without the Unreal Engine 4 front end that this game uses, I think that Halo 3 itself would run really well on the 8800 GT. Probably 900p 60 maybe? We'll never know. So while we cannot go back to the past to play and see this game's grass on an 8800 GT, this update does bring some features from the past into the present with the update to the way how the audio is handled in Halo Reach and Halo 3 for both the Xbox and PC versions. Back when Halo Reach launched, I compared how Reach sounded in back compat mode on Xbox One X to how it sounds in the Master Chief Collection, and a lot was wrong back then. So let's have a listen to how the assault rifle sounded in the MCC on launch versus how it sounds in the original game. So the MCC version of the game on PC and Xbox One, until this release, had muffled gun audio among many other sound mixing problems. And this also affected Halo 3's release on Xbox One systems to an extent. But now we have the patch, and this is how Halo Reach sounds now after this Halo 3 update. So in terms of tone and audio mix, it is now much closer to the original audio experience without it being muffled like it was before. Though there are still some differences that I can hear here. In general, if you listen to the assault rifle shots, they seem to have a bit more bass and grit in the original version, which causes their fall off into the reverb to sound a bit different. Have a listen. This is just a small detail, of course, and the audio sounds much better than before, but it's still not 100%. It's still imperfect. Along with the audio update to Reach, this patch to the MCC also adds an optional weapon skins for Halo Combat Evolved, which can be disabled or enabled in this menu as you see here. In general, this setting increases the resolution on textures on weapons, where they before had a lot of compression artifacts on them or were glaringly low resolution. So looking at the back of the Needler, you can see how the original texture has rather obvious pixelization due to its lower resolution. These are much reduced in the updated texture made available through this patch. While it's obvious on the Needler and I would say on the Plasma Rifle, the upgrade to textures is less obvious on other weapons like the Assault Rifle or some of the human weapons. Beyond this, one thing I was a bit saddened to see not included in this release was HDR for Halo 3. This is available on Xbox One S and Xbox One X, so I tried to turn it on in Windows to see if it turned on automatically in-game or new options showed up, but they did not. According to the Steam page for Halo 3 ODST, that game should feature HDR, so perhaps Halo 3 in the future will get HDR on PC whenever Halo 3 ODST releases. While we have that one negative point, there is a great positive to report on. I am happy to report that the Framerate Interpolation in Halo 3 is so far the best Framerate Interpolation put out in the Master Chief Collection. As it currently stands, I could only find 2 elements in the game so far which do not render properly at above 60 FPS. The first of which are plasma shots and brute spike shots, which only update every other frame at 120 FPS, so at 60 FPS. In the slowdown footage, you can see how that looks a little awkward, but it is nowhere nearly as bad as problems like we saw in Halo 1 or Halo Reach. Curiously, the Needler shots in Halo 3 update perfectly at 120 FPS. So perhaps plasma shots and brute shots not updating properly at 120 FPS is just an oversight that can be easily fixed. Beyond this, I'm also pretty sure that the crouching animation in-game is locked to 60 FPS, so crouching can look a bit framey in comparison to other first-person camera actions. And that's about it. So generally the presentation at 120 FPS is excellent. Reload animations from guns look amazing. Explosions and physics particles look just right. And animations and cutscenes work like they should. Given how Halo 3 has engine commonality with Halo Reach and ODST, I hope they can take the lessons learned from the framerate interpolation used in Halo 3 and go back and fix Halo Reach, which still has utterly broken animation above 60 FPS. In terms of performance, I do not have much to say here like I mentioned earlier. This game is more or less untouched from its 2007 original form, so it will run easily at 60 FPS at 4K on any modern mid-range GPU. The GTX 1060 and RX 580 have no problems here. In terms of CPU, really anything can be on the table, as a Core i5-8400 provided 100% perfect 120 FPS, excluding when the game does its checkpoint saves. With unlocked FPS on that same CPU and no frame cap with CPU limited settings, we are talking about insane frame rates here, all on a mid-range CPU. So the game should run like butter on anything DX11 compliant and halfway modern. This review is a bit shorter than usual for these Master Chief Collection titles, and that's a good thing, as there's not much negative to report on here. Rather, we're looking at a rather well done version of Halo 3 on PC, with the usual options we expect from the MCC on top of other nice changes to Halo Reach, a game which now sounds dramatically better. There are some nagging issues here left over for Halo 3 in terms of framerate interpolation or the fact that it lacks HDR, but they do not get in the way of the game's playability and pure enjoyment from this 2007 classic. One thing that I hope though is that this update for Halo 3 is a sign of things to come. This update released a new game but also fixed problems in older titles, and I hope that happens in the future where framerate interpolation in Halo Reach gets fixed, or features like HDR or split screen are added on PC. The collection as it is still imperfect, but this patch brings it one step closer to being better. Now we'll just have to see what happens with the next releases for the Master Chief Collection on PC. And until then, I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did enjoy it, hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. If you're already a subscriber, then consider hitting that little bell in the corner to be informed as soon as Digital Foundry posts a video. If you want to see more content like this in the future and help us out, consider supporting Digital Foundry on Patreon to get years worth of DF content available in high quality for download. If you want to talk to me about your experience in Halo 3 on PC, write a comment below or follow me and Digital Foundry on Twitter. And as always, this is Alex, bidding you farewell und auf Wiedersehen.